to the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wowing the world over the platform they deserve. I am your host, Nathan Ragland, and I certainly noticed with last week's episode, we got a lot of new people subscribing to the channel. Thank you guys so much for the love and support for last episode. If this is your first time listening after that episode, let me give you a brief introduction of this podcast. This is a podcast where I bring on artists that do absolutely incredible stuff, and I have them sit down and talk about their art journey, the stuff they're making, the stuff that they want to make, so much more. It is a nice, fun, cool, casual conversation with everyone involved, and today's episode is certainly no exception to that. Today's guest is Danny Chobe, better known as BroncoBurro, a 2D animator and compositor currently working at Titmouse with an eye and love for animals and monsters as seen from their work. This was a fun and fantastic conversation by an artist that was actually introduced to me thanks to my producer, the wonderful Tipsy J Hearts, and I know you guys are going to absolutely love this episode just as much, if not more than I did. If you do enjoy Danny and what they're all about, make sure you support her with her links down in the description below. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. Especially if you're on YouTube, keep the subscriptions up. I'm getting so close to 1K, and whenever I can get there, maybe I could potentially be able to do some more stuff with this podcast. Let's get to that 1,000. If you want to go even further with that support, or at least just want a place to talk about the incredible artists that I bring on this podcast, or just talk about art in general, maybe you should consider being a part of the Postmod Art Pod Discord server, the Artist Sanctuary. There's already a nice, wonderful, cool group of people there that get together, showcase each other's art, and just have a good, fun time, and we would love to have you be a part of that as well. And hey, if you even want to go further and truly support the podcast, maybe you should consider being a part of the Postmodern Art Podcast Patreon. There you can see exclusive behind-the-scenes content, stuff that was cut for time, bonus episodes, and so much more. Feel free to support the Patreon today. But now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I am so excited to be here.
Good. I am happy to hear that. I am sincerely glad to hear that. I know you were how should I put this? It was interesting because I know my producer Tipsy, she was the one that like hyped you up. So I was like, you know, anytime she recommends me an artist or whatnot, I'm instantly hyped for it. So there we go.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, thank her, rather. I'm flattered.
Hey, no problem. Plus, she was like, you know, hey, we need to do this artist, and I looked at your stuff, and I like the instant I saw your art, I'm like, get them.
Well, thank you. I do love drawing crazy stuff, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Plus, I think I can pinpoint probably part of the reason why Tipsy was like a major fan of your art in the first place, and that's the werewolves. Let's be honest.
I love drawing werewolves. Any kind of werewolves, like crazy shaped werewolves, like that's totally my thing.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad when people like the ones I draw, because I honestly like just try to make them as like kooky and out there as possible, so
well,
that makes me happy.
Trust me, we are going to divulge as much as we can into that, because believe me when I say there's a lot to talk about with there. And I'm excited to definitely talk about that myself, so there we go. How are you doing today, by the way?
I am doing okay. I took my dog to puppy school, so that was cute. Interesting.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what kind of dog you got, if I may ask?
Oh, she was from somebody's, like, accidental litter. Her mom's a golden retriever, and her dad was some kind of German Shepherd mix, so she kind of looks like a golden retriever with some Shepherd markings, so she's pretty dang cute.
Oh, I can only imagine. I know my mom and her roommate, they recently decided, well, not recently, but for the past couple of years, they've been training some purebred boxers, trying to see if they can get some more purebreds out of that. Like, they're trying to do the whole entire breeding thing or whatnot. And I hear funny stories all the time about them taking the dogs to training school and their behaviors and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, Absolutely. I know boxers are like they're known for being like clowns, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
They're really wonderful, goofy dogs, so I can only imagine.
I was gonna say, so I'll say this: my mom lives down in Florida and whatnot, so here we also have a couple of dogs as well, and like I think also last year my stepmom she got a purebred boxer, but the reason why we were able to get her especially so cheap is because she has like a cleft on her nose or whatnot, so she looks like the predator or whatnot, you know. Like essentially, and that dog is one of the most hyper goofy dogs that I have ever met, like jumping all around 20 different places because she's just a puppy. I mean, you know, especially when they're
Oh
young.
yeah, they're like they are so like just off the walls when they're like under a year old. Like mine will just like run in circles around the living room, like up onto the couch and back down onto the floor, like on repeat. Like yeah, they're just they're definitely a handful when they're that young. I can only imagine a boxer puppy.
Oh, I know, especially what was it recently? So my stepmom had to like leave the house for at least like a week or so to help my sister move, and like we had to watch the dog, and the puppy has like some sort of like separation anxiety or something like that, because anytime my stepmom is not in the house, her first defense is to just crap everywhere. So,
Oh goodness.
so during that time, I had to make sure that anytime it was just like me in the house alone or whatnot, just at least keep my door open, because if I'm not careful and I like shut it to like eat dinner, I come out and 20 minutes later and there's like at least 2 piles on the floor. I'm like, come on.
Dang, that sounds hard. I mean, like my girl, she has this thing where she gets so excited when she sees a new person that she'll just like pee instantly. Man, dogs are silly. They get so like excited or like distressed when people like enter or leave the room. They're just like I don't know. I feel like they're so like like kind of like pure and full of joy that they like I guess like can't contain themselves or something.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
kind of funny, but it's ultimately very annoying sometimes.
It can be, but at the end of the day, I mean, if it was really that annoying, we wouldn't have them in the first place, right?
Absolutely.
There you go. All right, Danny, before we really get going, I must ask more or less the icebreaker question of the podcast. Let's say you get to go to a deserted island on your own accords. It is just you, alone with your thoughts. You get to kick back, relax, get to breathe, get to truly enjoy yourself for a little bit. To help make sure you can truly relax, you can bring one piece of media or one piece of art with you. Something to help with that unwind and relaxing mood more than anything else. If given this opportunity, what would that one piece be?
That one piece of media would honestly be Minecraft.
Okay.
Like, I could play that infinitely, honestly. I've been playing it like since like the beta when I was really young. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I would just sit there, chill, and build some houses pretty much. Like, it feels like it would be a really zen time, honestly.
I mean, to be fair, like, you know, with the flexibility and obviously like the sandbox nature of that game, like you can really set whatever mindset you want going into that game, and you can set it up and do whatever you want. So getting that zen mentality is really easy with a an open-ended game like that.
Oh yeah, like whenever I like hear those questions about how like if you were stuck on a deserted island, like what's the one piece of media you would bring? I always thought like that has to be it because you can just keep building like goals for yourself like as long as you want essentially. So it feels like it's honestly the most like bang for your buck in terms of like what a video game can be.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. But nevertheless, Minecraft, that is your answer. You're locking that in.
Absolutely. Minecraft is my answer. I'm locking it
All
in.
right, now that you've locked that in, I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. You can support the podcast on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/PMAP and follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at PostmodArtPod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. She is a 2D animator and compositor currently working at Titmouse with an eye and love for animals and monsters, especially werewolves. Welcome to the podcast, Danny Chobe, aka BroncoBurro.
Ooh, that is quite the introduction. Thank you.
I just try to make sure that I give you the proper introduction because, like I said before, Danny, whenever I was first aware of your stuff, I was instantly blown away. And so, for the people who may not know about you beforehand, I want them to be instantly blown away as well. But before I really divulge into the art that you are producing, I want to go back just a little bit, if I may. I want to know more or less the origin story of Bronco, if I may. What got you interested in art and animation in the first place?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I'm like everyone has that like thing where they're like, oh yeah, I've been drawing since I could pick up a pencil, and while that's kind of me, I want to be maybe a bit more specific than that.
That's fair.
I when I was like really young, I was like so obsessed with The Lion King that like I
Ah.
would that like there came a certain point where my mom was like, you cannot put this in the VHS player like one more time. I'm going to like cut off my ears if you do it like one more time. So like I started by drawing like lions on paper. I would draw like myself as a lion, my cat as a lion, like anyone I could think of as a lion. So yeah, honestly, it's got to be The Lion King as my like first inspiration to start drawing. And then I found Neopets, and
There you
it kind of just goes from there.
go. I can only imagine going back to the Lion King just for a second. I can just only imagine like your mom like probably just like doing dishes or something like that. You pop in the VHS player, nah, ah!
Yeah, that was honestly like exactly it. I would seriously watch it like 4 times a day. Like whenever like she would be like, "Why don't you watch a different movie?" I'd be like, "Okay, what about The Lion King 2? Why don't we watch that one?"
As someone that also grew up with Lion King, it was more my brother with the Lion King, but I mean, it still had a very special place in my heart. I totally understand where you're coming from, and there is no shame in loving the Lion King like that. Um, I guess also like based on what you've been able to produce, I imagine also kind of that affinity for animals really started with the Lion King as well. What is it about animals that like creatively like get you going?
Honestly, I think something interesting about animals is that we as humans, when we see a like human drawn on paper, it's very easy for us, since we have that familiarity with the human face, to pick out any imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
And like kind of our eye is just kind of sharper for humans, so there's a lower level of abstraction before we start getting kind of like weirded out or something. And that's cool to do in art anyway, but with animals there's kind of like this like much higher ceiling for like what shapes we're going to accept as a cat
Mm-hmm.
without it like looking uncanny. So my favorite thing about animals is how much you can like really push their shapes
Oh yeah.
and like do like crazy things with them, and the human brain will be like, yep, that's a normal cat, that's exactly what a cat looks like nothing weird about this. So, so I love that like like flexibility we have in them. Like we're kind of worse at face recognition for animals, but we have this like higher threshold for like what we will accept, if that makes sense. Also, I just love drawing muzzles. I think they have this like great expressive quality to them,
Mm-hmm.
especially the way that cartoons would draw them in like the like 80s, like like Bluth era stuff, and like old school Disney. Like I
Oh yeah.
love how like elastic they are and working with them. So yeah, I just think they're funner to draw in general.
Plus, like, on top of all those things that you're talking about, there's also more or less the flexibility that animals give as well, concerning the fact that, like, there's so many different breeds, there's so many different, sizes, there's so many different, like, shapes that you can work with or whatnot, to where, like, granted, you can somewhat get the same for humans, but I feel like there's just a wider range you can work with when it comes to animals. I mean, just think about the dog alone. How many breeds have been animated? I mean,
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's also this like visual clarity you can get because we have these like associations with animals and like archetypes we kind of project onto them. So if you want to get across like a character dynamic really fast, you can kind of like cheat by using some like animals. Like say you wanted to have like this like big guy who is kind of like sweet but everyone's like frightened of him. You could have this like huge like Rottweiler looking dude with like like an unconventional, like maybe like shirt with like Hello Kitty on it, like that would immediately like convey to the audience like what you're trying to do. So it's like kind of fun to play around with that too. There like we just like put so much like I guess stock into like these inherent personalities we project onto animals, and honestly I kind of love that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I going back just a little bit. I love the Rottweiler with the Hello Kitty shirt or whatnot. For some reason, when I thought about that, do you remember the music video "Lone Digger" by Caravan Palace?
I sure do. I love that music video.
It's so gorgeous, but whenever you said that, my first thought is having one of those dogs dressed in the Hello Kitty shirt right before the fight scene happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
When did it for you go from like a general love for animation to a passion and wanting to make it your career?
I believe I was in high school, like middle school, high school, and I was like a big Warrior Cats like person essentially, and
Okay.
I like the multi animator project community just kind of started going when I was in like high school, like going like as strong as it is now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing like this like animation was always cool, but like there was something really special about seeing these characters that I like read growing up like fully realized in these like really over the top like big gorgeous productions essentially. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. I definitely like want to do that. And some of the people in those communities started going to school and getting like careers in the industry, and I kind of felt like, oh yeah, you can do that. You can go to school for animation and become an animator.
Oh
I
yeah.
think I'm gonna do that. It was kind of this like slow kind of like falling into animation as a career.
There you go. Do you remember any? You said you mentioned the multi-animator projects, which is obviously a very like key thing, especially for animation these days, like indie animation. And
Yeah.
whatnot. Do you remember any like big ones that like, or any of the ones that you may have seen that like instantly triggered in your mind, like I could totally do this?
Ooh, yeah, actually. The big one that I saw before I started participating in the community was Whisker Moon's Wolf map with Leaf Pool and Crowfeather. That's like
Okay.
one from I think 2013 or 2014. One of those like earlier years, and I remember seeing it and thinking, I've never heard this song before, but it's so like evocative of this like character dynamic. I kind of want to like portray that kind of like high emotion stuff, like, and it was just this thing where like the next week I like entered into my first multi animator project, and yeah, I just kind of went from there.
I mean, it's a good start and a good foundation more than anything else. Would you say some of those like multi-animator projects? Would you say those were like some of the biggest inspirations for you as an animator?
As like an older animator, absolutely yes. It's honestly, I've always been more inspired by like independent works than not, because it truly requires like a lot more like there's nobody really like, like whipping a team and organizing like those things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like sure you have a lead, but it is just a bunch of like impassioned people coming together and making something. So, like over the years, as multi-animator projects have kind of like, I think the general age group that makes them has kind of gotten a bit older over the years. As like the animation quality like continues to like kind of skyrocket at like the highest end of like, the animation quality they come in. I just continue to be inspired, and I see even younger artists each year like making these like very nuanced acting decisions, and I just it's really inspiring to me because I see how much it like inspires other younger artists, and I think back to when that was me, and I just like I still like I don't participate much anymore these days, but keeping up with that community is honestly one of the things that makes me still excited about animating today, if that makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, especially seeing more, like you were saying, like seeing these people, like, you know, get this like incredible, like independent but yet still connected crew or whatnot. And putting forth like an incredible project. It's one of the things I always love whenever it comes to like multi-animator or reanimation projects or whatnot. Just having these people like getting to come together and essentially like push out like a unique product at the end of the day. And especially seeing just how more connected it makes the community as well. Like it's always a marvel to admire at, if nothing else.
Heck yeah.
Exactly. I also yeah. Wow, words come back to me. Words are wonderful, aren't
No
they?
worry, I feel ya.
Are you nervous? You don't have to be too nervous. I appreciate the fact that like it's incredible to know more or less like some of these reanimation projects and like the multi-animator projects or whatnot are a major inspiration for artists such as yourself. And I can imagine like for a lot of them, they probably influenced your style as well. Now for people that may be watching the video version, they get a little bit of a taste of it right there with your little icon photo right there. But I have to know like the style that you have, how would you personally describe it and what made you decide that was the style you wanted to go with?
Well, honestly, I don't think a whole lot about my style. I don't know if this is a generic answer or not, but in my opinion, like each piece and each, say, like, story setting I have, I kind of like approach on its own merits. Like,
Okay.
I think the thing most people would probably associate me are my werewolves and those burnout dogs guys and all that sort of stuff. When I was, a few years back, I kind of rediscovered my like kind of this like 70s phase I was really in when I was younger. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really know why, but I was really drawn to the like shape language of like cartoons from the 70s and the general like fashion styles of some of these like really broad crazy shapes and the like very warm retro colors. And so like I thought, maybe I want to incorporate this into my art style a bit more, especially like for this like project. And I also started at that time like going like it's been a long time since I drew like wolves for a story, if that makes sense. What can I do to make these shapes like absolutely like crazy? Like, what can I do to like really stretch these shapes to make them like something really alien and kind of like out of this world, right?
Right.
So those two, that like influence and that like desire to create something that's like really kind of like weird and alien looking, kind of like coalesced into the kind of sharp angle, like very like one of the things I definitely do is that like I try to like simplify my lines as much as possible, like the outside ones. Like if something can be a straight line, I'm going to make it a straight line,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
That
So
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, so it was definitely this very general, like as striking as possible, as immediately readable as possible. I would say that's my style or ethos, at least for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, like, it makes sense, like, more or less, like, especially for each individual project, like, you don't have, like, a, how should I word this? It's not like you try to go forth and try to make whatever style you, like, the signature style, like, the same thing every single time. You go into it thinking, what would be the style to best complement this project? Is that more or less the mentality right there?
Oh, absolutely. I have always felt like when I was younger, I used to worry a lot, about like my style and like what am I going for? Like what do I like need to project? But it kind of came to this point where like there's so many different things I'm kind of interested in drawing that I think like trying to kind of like almost brand myself with a certain style at some point became more of a detriment than a help. So for me, choosing my like visual approach based on the project let me experiment with a bunch of other different stuff. Like sometimes the shapes are crazy and kooky and just kind of like fun and bright, but sometimes like drawing like more like pastoral cutesy things with like pastel colors and such is what I'm in the mood for. So I honestly really think that like every artist should give themselves that like breathing room that there might be like a visual style you gravitate more towards, but still experiment in different directions because over time you will just kind of naturally like create your own visual identity, I guess.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, thinking back, seeing the stuff that you have had a hand in one aspect or another, I can definitely see what you're talking about. Because now that I think back, I did say like a signature style, but at the same time, like I'm also thinking of the projects you've had a hand in and helped with animating or whatnot. And boy, there's actually a good range of styles now that I think about it. The first thing that came to mind when it talks to like different styles is something that you actually helped out with when it came to when you were in college at Sheridan. Paper Dreams, this major project that you worked
Oh
on with students or
yes.
whatnot. And for those who hadn't seen it, like it goes back to the cutesy style that you mentioned for like a quick second there. Um, I'm wondering how that film more or less came to be because I imagine it was probably for it had to be for an assignment. So I can only imagine like what the collaborative process was and what it came to deciding on having that more or less cutesy style.
Yes, well, in third year at Sheridan College, they kind of like it's really funny. They kind of like grab a like literally like random grouping of people and they like sit you in a server and they're like, okay, get to know each other. You're going to make a film in 8 months. Good luck, essentially. And we had this kind of like weird split of people where we had a bunch of background artists and like two people who, felt like animation was more of their specialty.
Mm-hmm.
So from the beginning, one of our goals was to make sure that we were focused more on like the vistas and less on having like say a particularly complex character. And we kind of wanted to tell a simple story too.
Right.
So I was production manager for that, which is like I kind of corralled people and made sure people were doing what they were supposed to be doing. And like I actually had like no hand in either the character design nor the story chosen. I was on the board team, but the base concept and the characters nothing to do with it. But one thing I did do was a lot of the animation,
Mm-hmm.
especially some of the more like challenging shots. Like I did like all of the like water effects and like the one long temple scene and like Paper Dreams was interesting because like I think that like in some ways it's like we kind of like had to come together and just pick something that like worked for all of us. Sorry, I think I'm getting a bit off topic.
No, you're perfectly fine. I think you're
But
saying really good on topic because I'm really definitely intrigued to see how this project more or less came to be.
oh yeah, so we kind of had to like just pick something that worked for us.
Mm-hmm.
Paper Dreams was like we were proud of what we made and it came out okay, but in a lot of ways that project was like the first like really big piece that like most of us had like worked on and it was kind of like this I guess like lesson in where to compromise and where not to and to kind of like you might have like this certain thing you want for the project, but you might be outvoted, and sometimes you just need to kind of work with what other people want. At the end of the day, with Paper Dreams, I did have a lot of fun doing it. Like the character designer who worked on it, Bridget Keith. Bridget Keith, yes. I think she did a great job with making these like really simple designs that like everyone could handle animating, and I think they have this like nice visual appeal. So I'm still like I'm still proud I was part of that. It wasn't like it was a weird situation where like none of us really like chose any individual part of it. It was kind of just this like by consensus, like what do we think we can get done and what do we think will look best, like kind of thing. So yeah, that was an interesting time back in third year for sure.
I can only imagine. I mean, if I do say so myself, just watching the film itself, like I enjoyed it more or less. I love the cute style that you guys presented or whatnot. I appreciated the scenes, especially like you said, that long temple scene, like the complexity that had to go with some of those bits right there, like wonderfully executed, if I do say so myself. It's one of those, like, it's incredible to see that, but I imagine, like you said before, like having that kind of experience or whatnot, it must have been good to have that experience beforehand, especially considering the fact that that was for third year, and for fourth year you went, I'm not gonna say in a completely different direction, but you went from this nice soft cutesy thing to rumble.
Oh yeah. I like when it comes to like making a short film, at the end of the year, like I loved my time on Paper Dreams, but I was like, by the end of the year, we were all kind of just like absolutely over it. We had been like slaving away for the past like 8 months,
Right.
and we all kind of just wanted it to be done. And a lot of the time I spent on Paper Dreams was just like management, so I don't really feel like I got to do as much like hands-on stuff as I would have liked to. So I was really excited about fourth year being able to do something that was a bit more like mine and me, I guess.
Yeah.
So I kind of just like I sat down and I had a bunch of different like kind of like disparate ideas. But at the end of the day, I thought like what's the most like me like thing, like if you like put like my name in Neural Blender, what would you get? Like kind of like thing. And so I thought like yeah, like some kind of like like greaser themed thing with some wolves and then they fight. That sounds right. Like
Yep.
So I made Rumble. Like Rumble's not really supposed to be like I'm gonna say it doesn't have like the most like it's not like very story heavy. It's mostly just like me having fun with animation.
Right.
Because like in fourth year you only have, I mean, they recommend you make your film a minute long. Mine ended up being 2, but
Okay.
that's not uncommon. But that is like a limited amount of time to tell a story in. So I kind of went the direction of I'm going to use a really basic story. I love storytelling, but I like long form storytelling. But in a short, that's a great time to do some like visual spectacle and really like kind of like intense graphics, I guess. So
Yeah.
I kind of went with the like dumbest, punchiest thing I could think of. So yeah, I'm making Rumble for sure.
There you go. I mean, like I was gonna say, like I love how you went from like this soft cutesy, softer colors or whatnot with Paper Dreams to this like harsher color, rougher edges, like more bang for your buck storytelling with Rumble. And I to be fair, like I was gonna say, I hadn't even seen the full thing of it, but what little I have seen out there, because I didn't see if it was uploaded anywhere, and that's probably on me. But from what I did see, like goodness, I want to see the full 2 minute short, because like I just love like how recognizable the characters are, just like the action, that what little was out there was incredible or whatnot. Like I am in love with that concept, and I can only imagine, like, even though it's only 2 minutes, how much punch you were able to add for every little bit that you could.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not out yet because I didn't finish it by the end of the semester because
Okay.
I started working a bit earlier than some other people did. Like I started my job like partway through the semester.
Right.
However, I'm still working on it, and I think it should be done by the end of the summer. But yeah, it was really like this thing of like anything I like the whole story is like as streamlined as possible, essentially. Like any scene that I thought was like slowing things down or a bit too superfluous, like during certain parts, I just like ripped it out and kept as much like action in the middle as I could, and then like kind of like only like put as much like scenes that were more focused upon like, okay, what's happening, like what's going on, like the minimum I could get away with, essentially.
I mean, fair enough.
So yeah, it's pretty much a story where it's just kind of like sprinting to the fighting part, essentially.
I mean, whatever gets the
Yeah,
job done, right?
yeah, totally. It's a project that I pretty much made just to have fun with, and I think it's essentially done its job of just, I guess, more or less being a showcase of my love for animating traditionally and kind of like grittier or like more like angular, like retro looking art. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt that more or less the the main characters of that story are basically anthropomorphic werewolves or just dogs in general, which I know is something that you tend to lean a lot towards, if I may.
Oh
I,
yeah.
what is it about, like, for those who may not already know, if me telling beforehand wasn't a major sign, you tend to have an affinity when it comes to werewolves and like animals when it comes to your animation. What is it about werewolves that once again just creatively just like gets you going and like makes you have to animate them?
Well, I would say I could answer that in two parts. One part more to do with like just dogs in general, and one part to do more with werewolves specifically. When it comes to like dogs and wolves and such, they were one of the first, like besides lions, one of the first things I learned how to draw. So
Okay.
if I'm doodling on a piece of paper, like they are the thing I'm going to default to because I feel like I could draw the base features that make up one in my sleep. So I know that if I want to get like this kind of like very streamlined performance, that like this is kind of my like go-to subject, and like I love drawing them. It like I keep talking about the muzzle. It makes me seem kind of weird, but I just love the like floppiness you can have in the lips, or like how like striking the like big bared teeth are, and how like you can kind of like stylize the fur into like any shape you need. Like okay, you need like these like sharp jagged edges, you can have these like almost like straight lines, or do you need a softer rounded character, then they can kind of look more fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
There's just this like, as you said earlier about dogs having this like huge variety within them, same with wolves. I think they're just really utilitarian, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and fun to draw. But for werewolves specifically, I think that there's something very, for a lot of people, almost relatable about werewolves. I think that they are popular, among a lot of people for a good reason. I think everyone has something in them that they don't really feel like they can tell people or something, and I think a lot of people also like really that thing that they don't really tell people might also be very special to them. So I think the imagery of somebody like transforming into a wolf and having a great time, away from polite society or something, resonates with a lot of people for like any given reason, right? It could be the person's trans, it could be the person is, in the closet, it could be the person might be a person of color who lives in a mostly white area and feels they can't necessarily be themselves. Or it could be something even simpler, like in their spare time, they like to write Transformers fan fiction, but they can't talk about it in their daily life. Like, there's so many things, and it's just this kind of like evocative imagery, I guess. And also, like, they're just fun and they look great. Like, even like a bad werewolf looks like a badly drawn werewolf is like looks good, and like people will gravitate towards them in like video games and such. So yeah, I just think they're kind of like a very relatable trope, if that makes sense.
Oh no, absolutely. I have not personally thought of the trope itself that much. I'm just one of the people that is very simple minded of just werewolf looks incredible. But now that you actually like divulge a little bit more into it and talking about like the fact that they're like holding back on something like that sort of storytelling that could be told through that message or whatnot, like it's I can see how it is almost like putty for you to be able to mess with some of these characters and truly provoke that kind of werewolf initiative more or less.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like probably as many different portrayals of them as there are like grains of sand on the earth, right?
Yeah.
So so like yeah, it's a really malleable concept that's fun to revisit essentially. So yeah, Also, yeah, you're right. They look cool. Like,
Yep.
honestly, like, what's cooler than this, like, huge, like, wolf monster thing, right?
I
I
mean,
also just love the aesthetics.
I was gonna say, like, what's cooler than someone that might look, simple and average, just all of a sudden, like, just molting into this almost demonic-looking beast, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like it's just fun, honestly.
Exactly. Can you think of some of the? This is probably gonna be way too hard to narrow down, but can you think of how many characters that you've personally developed that could turn into werewolves? Is it at least like a good, 75% or higher than that of characters that could become wolves?
Oh man, like my whole like burnout dogs cast obviously
Yeah,
can turn into werewolves because that's the whole like
that's the gimmick,
I
more or
guess
less.
setting. I don't actually have many werewolves outside of that, but then even that's like kind of this half lie because my wife, who is also a very talented artist, has a setting where, that has werewolves within it, and she takes this wildly different approach than mine, which is really cool. And I've kind of been like, hey, can I put some of my characters into your story? Like, can I just squeeze some of them in? So some of them might be werewolves in another setting. So yeah, I have a lot of them. Maybe I'm a werewolf hoarder.
I was gonna say, shout out to the wife for helping out with the compulsive werewolf disorder.
Oh yeah, we both have it.
they, are you trying to project and telling us that you're both just werewolves and we just don't know of that just yet?
Hey, now that's a secret.
Oh, okay. Okay, hands off on that one. Won't divulge too much into that. Uh,
Yeah.
I can only imagine, but like some of the other characters that I also want to touch on as well, because you've got some incredible characters. I know one of the ones I definitely want to talk about is the one that represents your icon, more or less, D'Angelo, right there.
D'Angelo.
Yeah, I have to know about him. What inspired this character, and how would you describe it for people that may have never seen him before now?
Oh man, D'Angelo is one of my oldest characters. He's like so old that he started as a Neopet. Like, that's how like
Okay.
OG we're talking here.
Okay.
By the way, I didn't draw my icon. My icon was drawn by a very talented person for Art Fight. I just
Okay.
wanted to say.
Duly noted.
I
Sorry
can't.
about that.
No worries, but yeah, D'Angelo is he, I guess, like, has always kind of been this like sorry, talking about my characters is sometimes a bit hard, but like D'Angelo is just this like larger than life dude. I mean, like, he is obnoxious, he's a party guy, he is always like getting into some kind of like, like almost like college frat bro type of mischief, but he is like a military commander. He's a lieutenant, so very popular among his company, but he has this very kind of like work hard, play hard thing. So he is very gregarious, but that is kind of concerning for him because he kind of sees it as like, okay, like whatever I got to get done, I just like throw myself into it fully and I get it done. And he's known for never losing a battle, but because he's kind of like more or less like min-maxing achievement and excitement essentially, does that mean he's paying the most attention to casualty rates or that kind of like sort of thing? Maybe not. So he's kind of like a contentious guy, his like attitude is infectious, but he wreaks he's like a wrecking ball essentially. He like wreaks havoc everywhere he goes, right?
We're not saying D'Angelo's a war criminal, but if he was, I'm pretty sure the other war criminals would vote him like the most popular of the bunch.
Yeah, like he might be a war criminal, maybe. Maybe he eventually becomes one.
There you go. I have to know because like first off I love the characters that you've developed. Like we talked about the Boneyard Dogs or whatnot. We talked about D'Angelo and whatnot. I have to know, like, for you personally, like, do you have a can you think if there is a process for how you develop a character, or is it just kind of one of those like a seed of something just sparks and it just grows and develops on its own to its own unique thing until you have to just will it into existence?
Well, I've kind of amassed quite a few characters over the years. Like I would say like in my main roster I have like 10 or something crazy like that. And it kind of come like there's two different processes of which they come about, right?
Okay.
It's either this like story first or character first thing, right?
Okay.
For people who tend to make a lot of OCs, you kind of just get this idea of like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if you had a firefighter, but he was like afraid of heights? Like that would be like a hilarious concept. And so you kind of start with this little kernel, and it's kind of like a pearl developing within like a like clam where like layers keep getting like painted on over time as you kind of like turn the character over in your head and keep adding like more complexities. And then you might end up with a point where you have this character and they have enough backstory that you can kind of like mold this setting around them or mold this kind of world building. Or some other people or some other characters, they might you might have this idea for like a world like, oh man, what if like all cables were snakes and you had to like get the right like species of snake to like plug into your computer? Like I don't know. Someone like you have this like wild concept, and you kind of end up making characters to go in it. Like I've kind of done both, but like for me that's kind of how it goes. A lot of my characters have kind of been around for a while, and they kind of start to like they kind of like to like they kind of start like creating other characters around them. Like for example, D'Angelo has been around for a long time, but some of the other characters in that setting haven't. Like his brother and like another guy named Oscar, like they're both like newer characters, and they kind of came about because like they support bits of his backstory, or they like add like a fun dynamic, like, you know, compared to him. Like for example, D'Angelo's brother Quincy is very quiet and reserved, and so you have this like very big contrast between these two characters, and that creates a lot of like fun situations and stuff. Honestly, like a character can essentially just come out of nothing, and at least for me, the complexity just kind of naturally builds with time, because you have moments of like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if, or like, oh, wouldn't it be sad if, or like, oh, they would look really great in a green jacket, and then later at night you're like, oh my god, what if their dead dad gave them that green jacket? And like
the snowball effect, essentially. It's like the little snowflake rolling down the hill is like, oh my god, the entire backstory in this one jacket.
Absolutely.
Goodness. I know you developed quite a good bit of characters. Is there one or maybe a group of them that you have created and want to toy around with maybe a little bit more? Ones that you want to like develop a little bit more of their backstory or anything along the lines of that?
Well, I do have like a lot of them have like a lot of backstory. I'm just kind of sitting on it, and there's like only so much I really want to like put out there, because it's like, oh, this would be like such a great story or reveal, so I gotta like kind of hold on to this. But I do have a character who could use some more development. She is very like, I don't draw her a whole lot. Her name is Kenny. She's kind of this like scene vampire, like like rock star. And I have this idea for a, I guess, setting she's in where essentially like it's like in the future, and we've gotten like so like our media has gotten like so insane that there are no more like human like singers or actors or whatever, because the level of spectacle needed is just so big. Like it's all mythological creatures like doing like crazy shit. So Penny like starts as a human, and she kind of like you know, wants to like break into the music industry, but it's kind of this thing of like, you can't do that. Like humans are boring. They don't have any powers. They can't like supernaturally like enhance their music. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, walk on stage and like sing just like a person? Preposterous.
How
So
mundane.
exactly, but there is one thing humans can do to become supernatural. They could join the vampire multi-level marketing scheme.
Go on.
Yeah, so she starts as a thrall, which is essentially like the like lowest level on the ladder, and it's one of those things of like, okay, you can pay like $200 to get our like beginner vampire kit, and that comes with like 2 conversions that you can sell to like it's like totally like one of those like Scentsy like multi-level marketing scheme things, and not very many people end up like actually like with substantial vampire powers that give them a good career. So it's kind of like that story is kind of meant to be this interesting exploration about how art as a career kind of can demand a lot of sacrifices in terms of like your personal touches and originality, and she like needs a bit more development. Like, I still don't really know how that narrative is going to go fully. I just know that I really like this idea.
If I may as well, I really love this idea. Partially because I've been listening to a lot of different podcasts recently, and a good couple of them are ones about scams and such. So you talk about multi-layer marketing campaigns or whatnot, I'm already like invested in that aspect. But even then, like how unique of the world that you're trying to develop and how Kenny more or less like fits into it or whatnot. Like, I'm intrigued to see, going back to the metaphor I used earlier, I'm more or less intrigued to see how you're going to mold this putty into a beautiful masterpiece, because that just sounds incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like on my mind, especially since like kind of like 2000s nostalgia is kind of like a bit more in right now, and I'm really digging that because that's around, when I grew up, like
Same.
like
So.
late aughts, like sort of stuff. So like, yeah, I'm kind of feeling it. I have some other projects that are more, I guess, on my mind and occupying my time, but I'm really excited to delve more into that when I have time, for sure.
And if I may ask as well, for some of the other characters and properties that you've developed as well, like, D'Angelo and his little universe, as well as the werewolf dogs that we talked about as well, how would you like to develop their stories more? How would you like to present that someday to the world?
Well, for Forever Gold, which is the, like, I guess, story universe D'Angelo is part of, I might be working on something already.
Ooh, you tease.
Yes, it's at the point where like I figure I'll like kind of like announce like, hey, I'm working on this thing when it's like a bit further along.
Right,
But
absolutely.
pretty much all of my worlds, I generally end up having like a plan to do like a video game or like a comic or something of the like. But lately I've been very focused on games because I love programming, so it's kind of this like
Ooh.
great marriage of 2 things I like to do in
Okay.
terms of like art and programming. So yeah.
That you're only giving me like just a few crumbs of what could potentially be out there, but I am consuming every little bit that I can just in anticipation, because especially like, I don't know if it's what you're playing with Forever Gold, but like thinking of the possibility of a game depending on that universe, seeing the characters and what's out there, like, I'm intrigued how many different directions you could go with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And honestly, that's one of the difficult things if you're like the kind of person who develops the characters first and then the world later, is that you haven't really like purposefully made this universe for a certain format. So there's like tons of different things you can do. It's been a bit of a journey kind of like narrowing down exactly what I wanted to do for Forever Gold, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I've more or less arrived at it.
Okay.
So that is my like, I guess, like main side project right now.
Okay.
Besides finishing Rumble, that is.
Right, absolutely. That what little bit is probably left, I'm sure you're probably working hard to get that done when you're not busy with work, and we'll talk about that real quickly. But also, like, just again, knowing the characters that you have ready and knowing what you could potentially be presenting out there, whether it's short or long-term future, like I'm probably one of the many at this point that's just eagerly anticipating any more that you could be able to present out there. And especially knowing like the possibilities you can run with it, with what little bit you did give. Ooh, you you're making me starving at this point.
Thank you.
There you
Yeah, I'm really hoping to kind of like ramp things up a little bit soon for Forever Gold. So I don't know, you might see some stuff in the next year or so. I don't know.
Well, once again, I will definitely be waiting at the edge of my seat, waiting to see what that may be. But I also know, like, part of the reason why you haven't been able to present that sooner, obviously, is because you're an animator. You have jobs. You have to get your job done. And I know,
Absolutely.
I know some of the ones that, well, the one that I want to talk about, like, super duper quickly, and the one that I saw that you animated on, and I was amazed with it, is you were an animator for Middlemost Post.
Yes, I was an animator for Middlemost Post. It was
Yes.
my third year internship.
Okay. I can only imagine, like, especially, you were in school at that time. I can only imagine just finally getting that experience in the field, especially for a show like that with how unique of an art style and unique of a universe that is. It must have been incredible for you to get a chance to really delve in and get to work with that stuff.
Oh yeah, I was terrified, honestly. Like just coming out of school where you had as much time as you wanted to work on, stuff where you're only like answering to your like group or yourself to going on to a full production. It was really something, but yeah, I learned a lot animating on Middlemost Post. The animation was really at times like wacky and zany, so it was like um kind of fun, honestly, to learn how to animate a bit more, in that direction because, like, despite what my art style might make you think, like, I've always kind of been more of like a more like slower, like Disney-esque animator. Like, I'm
Okay.
not saying Disney-esque in terms of quality. I mean in terms of like spending more time on the scenes and like kind of just putting in acting nuance where I can. Like that's kind of been my specialty. So that kind of like Looney Tunes esque like uh punchy animation was kind of like a new frontier for me. I think it was really useful when I got to Rumble for sure. But yeah, it was a learning curve for sure.
Absolutely. And I will go ahead and say this on the podcast. The creator, John Trabick III, and please tell me if I'm pronouncing his name right or wrong, but he is someone I'd love to just talk to, just to like get in his head for a little bit to figure out how that show came to be, because you could attest this as someone that worked on that show. That universe and that, setting or whatnot, it's insane and unique and like elastic in a way because of the possibilities that are potentially there just based on this new unique universe that he's presenting.
For sure. We in the Canadian animation industry are not like direct, like say I had an interesting role on the project, and most people who animate on these shows that are rigged, I guess, have this interesting relationship with the project where like our studio is kind of like subcontracted from Nickelodeon, so we don't get a whole lot of like time talking with like the creator and such. But
Okay.
whenever they do kind of give us like their time and go on call with us, it's really fascinating to you kind of get to like pick their brain and ask them questions about like like what are you going for with this character, like what kind of like performance do you want from them. So that's always like a fun experience. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do that on Middlemost Post because I joined the
Okay.
production rather late, but I still really did enjoy working on it.
I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, just getting that experience in the first place, that's why you went to school in the first. I imagine that's one of the reasons why you went to school, to have that experience, especially going headfirst into where you're currently working now. Speaking of Vancouver, you're working at Titmouse, which is incredible.
I am.
I have to know, like, obviously you don't have to divulge in what project you're currently working on, especially if there's NDAs. I do not want you to get fired just because you're talking about what you are working on. But I can only imagine, like, how is the experience working for Titmouse now compared to, like, that first internship experience? Like, is it about what you were expecting? Is it something wholly different? Like, how is that experience?
It's super different. Like the shows themselves are just like completely different from the ground up. Middlemost Post was like kind of this like high action, like zany comedy thing. So the weekly like quota, which is how many like seconds of animation you do per week, was much higher than what I'm working on right now.
Okay.
At Titmouse. I can't say what it is, but it is this kind of beloved children's property.
Ooh, okay.
And the type of animation for this like show is very kind of like deliberate and focuses a lot on like character relationships and acting, and so we actually get a lot of time to really dig into our scenes and essentially pull the best performance out of these characters we can. It's a real like quality over quantity type of experience. And I really, really love that about this show. It has a lot of animal characters in it too, so I also get to, use my, I guess, skills to add like little like species specific like touches, like on the bird characters. Lots of those little like kind of like head tilts they do, and I honestly like have really enjoyed like working on the current show I'm working on at Titmouse. Yeah, working there has been it's just been pretty dang cool all around, honestly.
I can only imagine, like, especially as someone that, as I've reiterated before, that loved animating animals and werewolves and stuff like that, knowing that you're working on a show that involves a lot of animals and such, you're just like, I was born for this.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I can only imagine, like, the experience actually working, like, in a place like Titmouse, in what I would consider a very established animation studio at this point. Like, how much of that do you think you're personally, like, taking in and then applying it to your own personal stuff as well?
Well, I gotta say that working in the industry is very different from anything you do by yourself. When you work on an animated show these days, it's most likely that you're working on a rigged animated show, which is a very different workflow than like, I guess, like my true love, which is like hand drawn animation. It's different, but honestly, I've always been this like big defender of like rigged animation, that it can be incredibly impressive and honestly like very nuanced in its acting. It's just a different medium essentially. So it's honestly been like a lot different than what I was doing right before it, which was working on Rumble, where I had to I hadn't worked with the rigs for like 8 months, so I kind of had to like switch back to that mindset, and that was really that was kind of like this like big like system shock, like, oh yeah, I gotta remember how to rotate an arm, and oh, why is this breaking? And like, oh geez, like suddenly the like legs are like 5 feet to the left, like what happened? There's a lot of like technical fiddling when it comes to working with the rigs, but I do have to say I've learned a lot. One of the things that I learn a lot from when working on the show is your supervisor gives you notes, like feedback, and they'll often point out stuff in acting that you might not be thinking about. Like they might be like, oh, well, it doesn't seem like he's sad about like this, it seems like he's sad about that instead, and it's kind of this like, oh, I didn't think of that, like, and I feel like I pay more attention now to intentionality when I guess doing character expressions and gestures and acting, and I think it's really helped like kind of like refine my eye during my time working there.
You know what? That's fair enough. I mean, it's especially like you said, getting to work with some of this technology and whatnot that you hadn't for a little bit, and I can only imagine how much of that, especially with like thinking about how a character would portray a certain thing, like once again going back to some of more or less your original stuff, and thinking of the stuff that you've been able to produce, thinking of the industry that you're currently working in, and getting these incredible opportunities. Thinking back, like especially from when you were starting out, like even just drawing lines and such, your journey as a whole, does it ever amaze you that you've come along this far in this art journey?
Um, I guess it's amazing in the way that I feel like it's always amazing to see anyone's journey, I guess. I won't like I guess discount myself. I am a very different artist than I was like 5 years ago, for example. Yeah, I am like there's always so much more that I have to learn and things I want to work on, but I am pretty happy with all the progress I've made over the years. It is kind of amazing to kind of look at my old deviant art and go like, ooh, wow, that's really special.
I can only imagine. Can you think of a moment on this art journey that, in your opinion, is probably like one of the most surreal so far? Like thinking back, even like telling younger you that you'd be able to do this or you were able to do that or whatnot, they would be absolutely amazed that starting off drawing lines led to that point.
Oh yeah, like during my time at animation school, like we had to take life drawing classes and I remember like I was just horrible at life drawing. Like I have this like thing where my like teacher told me like you're thinking in symbols, you're not thinking in like forms or something like that. And I thought like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like I don't really like think about the like dimensionality of these characters. And so like for like one of the years I was in school, I was like, okay, I got to go to Extra Life, which was like a another like life drawing session that happened in the like night more. And after a few weeks, I remember sitting down and drawing something that I think it was like a picture of Sasha,
Okay.
one of my OCs. And I remember looking at it and thinking like, oh, this looks like it has like a form, like it looks like I kind of know what I'm doing. Wow, like that was just this really surreal moment essentially. And I guess another one was that in second year at school we started doing character animation, which is instead of just like bouncing balls and stuff, we were kind of like doing a performance. And I did a like lip sync project that I was really proud of because it was like one of the first times that I used like more intentional acting choices.
Okay.
And my cat is sharpening her claws, sorry.
Are you fine?
The first time I started using more intentional acting choices, and I remember thinking like, oh yeah, like this looks like a thing that's moving and characters that might be like thinking and having emotions, like that's really surreal. Like it's not like I wasn't trying earlier when I was doing my like early Warrior Cats map parts or anything, but it was one of the first times that I looked at it and I was like, okay, like I can definitely see it, and it doesn't look like the head is like changing shape every 5 seconds. So like this is a win.
There you go. There you go. And I mean, at this point, like considering, like I said, going back to the art journey as well, like I can only think of how many like little victories you've shared along the way, and it's incredible. At least like hearing your story now, like it's incredible to know that like you've been able to get along this far and do some incredible stuff and still work on some incredible stuff. If I do say so myself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like animation is it's a passion for me for sure. Like I mean art is in general, but animation especially. It is cool to be working on like bigger, I guess like bigger than me, that is, projects. And I guess like every time I do something that's like a bit better than like the last thing I did, I'm like, oh yeah, it's all coming together. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Yes, no, that's incredible, and we've been talking a lot about the stuff you have been able to have a hand in this journey that you've gone so far, the incredible stuff you have ready at hand. But for this next question, if I may, I want to give you more or less the dream scenario. Let's say I am Big Shot Mr. Moneybags. I come up to you and I'm like, look, Bronco, what you got going on, absolutely incredible. We know that there's a lot of potential for something amazing, and we want to be able to more or less provide the foundation for you to provide something out of this world insane. We have connections to anyone and everyone in whatever entertainment industry possible, and more money than there should be possible. We should probably be helping out with so many different like pensions or something like that, but we'll focus on that in a second. For now, we're going to focus on you right now. If given this opportunity, what would be the dream BroncoBurro project?
Wow, that's a fun question. First of all, surprisingly, it wouldn't be an animation. I would be making a like huge like almost like theatrical old school JRPG.
Okay.
Using I would say maybe my Burnout Dogs guys like that would kind of be like the thing I would choose because that's like one of the big genres that made me fall in love with storytelling specifically is, playing old JRPGs. So I've always kind of had that like, I want to make one of those when I grow up like, feeling about them. So yeah, that would be my dream. I would make like a really good indie like JRPG style game. That would be my big thing. And you bet it would have werewolves in it.
I would be disappointed if it didn't have werewolves in it, especially if it's the Burnout Dogs. I have to ask, like, I want to elaborate on this point just like ever so slightly. Like when it comes to JRPGs, like I can understand where you're coming from that one more or less when it comes to the creativity aspect, because there's so much like open ground and open-ended aspects of it that you could totally lead down the JRPG path.
Yeah, are you asking like how would it fit into a JRPG?
I'm actually more or less asking like what is it about JRPGs that more or less get you creatively going as well?
Okay, so the big thing about JRPGs, and I guess in some ways, anime and Japanese material in general, is that I guess how do I put it? It's kind of like there is like less of a desire in JRPGs and Japanese media to, I guess, like over-explain the world building. Even though they're kind of known for their like weird text scrolls, they will just tell you an absolutely like batshit scenario and like expect you to just run with it, and it works. Yep. Like I think that one of my big problems with like Western pieces of fantasy media is that there's this need to like over explain or like easy win, and like you need to have a person from the normal world going into the like non-normal world. But in like JRPGs it'll be like, okay, you are like Dave lives in a world where like the government is controlled by bugs. You're on the run now. Let's go. And it's like, okay, I'm Dave. I'm running from these beetles. I get it. Okay. Like I love the to the pointness and also like how inventive and like crazy the world scenarios can get. Like even like two franchises, I guess, that I think of are like Final Fantasy and Tales of. And in both of those franchises, like each game will be just kind of in like a completely different setting.
Yep.
With like completely different world setup, and they just kind of expect you to go with it after they explain some basic stuff. I really love that version of fantasy storytelling, I guess.
There you go. I mean, you say Final Fantasy alone. There's a reason why there's at least 15 mainline games now, including all the extra side pieces, plus the Kingdom Hearts and all their installments or whatnot. Like, there's a lot when it comes to those universes to explore, and I get where you're coming from with how open-ended it is, but also just kind of like how much it just throws you in and just lets you have fun instead of like trying to meticulously go over every individual detail.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's always better when a piece of media like doesn't baby their audience too much or take too much time easing into it. Like I know like sometimes like the beginning can be confusing, but when it comes to games, especially as you like wander around and read things and look at flavor text, like people generally do want to be immersed, and over explaining things actually takes away from it, more than like just like essentially like playing it straight, like you kind of like came from this world, but just like helpfully adding like little bits of like foundational knowledge so you kind of know what's going on. People tend to figure it out eventually. I've always like really vibed with that like storytelling ethos, I suppose.
There you go. There you go. But sadly, we gotta get down from the dream scenario. We gotta get back to reality, and I'll ask the ever so generic question: where do you hope to see yourself 5 to 10 years from now?
Honestly, I would love to be doing something else. Like, as crazy as that sounds, I have loved my journey into the animation industry, but something I always like to say whenever I can like talk to anybody about this industry is that you go into it imagining, maybe eventually becoming a showrunner and making stuff yourself, or you go into it imagining that you will have this very large hand in the creative process, or that, you will, like, this will, like, creatively fulfill you. And I have to say, it doesn't. It's really fun, and I do love my job, but at the end of the day, something you have to remember is that it is a job.
Yeah.
And when it comes to me, when I'm animating all day, it can sometimes become a bit hard to end your day and sit down and want to animate even more, right?
Right.
So for me personally, I want to get into doing like programming and development as a career and continue my love for animation in my own personal projects. I think everyone has their own journey, and I will always love to animate and such, but I think that personally, I would love to get the opportunity to keep all of that like creative energy to myself, so to speak. However, I'm going to enjoy my time in the industry as I do. I have no like immediate plans necessarily to switch out. It's just something I'm thinking about for the future.
Right, right. I mean, more or less, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you can correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but you just want to make sure that you're at least happy with whatever you're doing, and especially when it comes to like animation, like you still have that love for animation, but whenever all you're doing is nothing but animation, whether it's job or hobby, like I get where you're coming from when it comes to just a point of just like wanting to find a way to step back and take a breather, but finding a way to creatively input yourself in opportunities like the programming and such when it comes to the video games or whatnot. I can only imagine how enriching that can be while still giving you that love for animation.
Absolutely. Like again, like something I like to say for anybody listening who's in animation, please keep your side projects. Please keep certain things to yourself, like certain like if you have this like world that is full of these characters you absolutely love and you want to make something of it, don't make it like a studio pitch. Like find some kind of way that you can personally achieve telling that story, because in the industry, like once like if you get the like golden opportunity to like I guess cast something out there, it is no longer yours. It is suddenly like subject to like studio like scrutiny and kind of like meddling, and it might come out very different than what you want. um Being in the industry is super fun and can be very fulfilling to be part of something big, but if what you're looking for is like a storytelling experience that's very personalized, then it's important for like at least I found it important for my mental health to keep certain things for yourself, if that makes sense.
That honestly makes a lot of sense, especially seeing the seeing what you have put out there. I can only imagine like some of the stuff you've kept to yourself, or at least want to develop a little bit more or whatnot. And it
Oh
just
yeah, like
go on.
all of my like characters and stories and stuff that I like put on my art blogs, like that stuff is totally mine. I would personally like never I guess, try to seek like, um, like very huge like funding for them, like from like a studio or something. Not that I really think they would pick them up because my stuff can be a bit out there, but I personally wouldn't do that because like some people are kind of like persnickety about how they want to like handle their story, and for me I know that's true. So yeah, like I do my best to give myself a lot of time for the things that are like make me the most excited, which is, my stories and characters and that sort of like like media telling stuff. That was a weird sentence, but you know what I mean.
I totally get where you're coming from, and I completely understand. Yeah. Uh, as we start to wind down the interview, I just have one last question I want to ask. Obviously, like, you've deeply entrenched yourself in art for one aspect or another for as long as you can remember. I once again harkening back to the wonderful Lion King days. I think your mom could probably agree to that in one aspect for another. How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
It's a fun question. It is probably one of the most fundamental like things about humanity to me. Um, One of the things that lasts the longest is our art and our storytelling and whatnot. Like, if you like, for example, like if you study world religions, there are many like I guess like plots or threads that are kind of like shared among like a weird like array of cultures, and that speaks to the idea that they kind of came from a like much earlier like time, like before we necessarily became so widespread. And that tells me that our stories stick around for a long time. Like, not all of them, but like a lot of certain tropes and ideas and things. And the same as with art, like one of the things that are most evocative about old societies is the way that they do art. Like, from the like surprising anatomical accuracy of like animals and cave art to the like honestly frightening like grasp of the human form the ancient Greeks had, and
Yeah.
like the like the like interesting like religiously tied style of the ancient Egyptians. Like, if you are if somebody mentions like a like popular ancient culture to you, one of the first things you're going to think of is how they did art. So I personally think that art is just like one of the most like deep art and storytelling, they're tied together, one of the most like deeply entrenched things about humanity. And also it is one like important in our daily lives as like one of our like main escapes from when stuff kind of sucks. Like, everyone has like some piece of media that brings some kind of comfort, um like some movie or book or something.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, when you're young, it can kind of shape like your interests as you get older. Like, sometimes you're introduced to like a like passion, like not necessarily art, because you saw it in a movie or something, or like it just like influences us in ways that I don't think we can fully understand. And in a lot of ways, it makes us who we are, both as like individual cultures and people. So yeah, art is one of the most important things to humanity. That's for sure.
There we go. That is wonderfully worded, if I do say so myself. Um, that is all the questions that I have for you. I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I want to shower you with a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do whatever I want. Um, Danny, ever since I was first introduced to your art, thanks to the wonderful producer, Tipsy J. Hars, ever since I was first introduced to your art, I instantly fell in love with it, just seeing what you've been able to present, the unique characters that you're able to present out there, just how much love and passion you seem to put into your stuff. Getting to sit down and talk with you and getting to really get to know more or less your story, and the seeing that love and passion on full display in one aspect for another, it it makes me truly appreciate what you're able to do, what you're able to push out there. I love just about every aspect of your characters. I love the journey you've been a part of, and I truly love and appreciate that. For you, like I see the love and passion you put into yourself, and I love that you're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that it sticks with you no matter what. The long and the short of it is, Danny, thank you for what you do. Thank you for presenting this stuff out there, for letting us enjoy your little bit of fun and happiness, and letting us be a part of that. And I've said it a million times before, and I'll say it again. I am eagerly anticipating whatever you put out there next, because I know it's going to be absolutely incredible. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. That made me blush. I really appreciate it. Yeah, like creating art is like essentially like this compulsion at this point, so I can't stop, won't stop, you know. And it especially makes me, happy or excited to hear that somebody is, interested in my characters and like I guess like bigger projects than individual like drawings, if that makes sense, because that really is where my heart lies. So really thank you, and like big thanks for having me on here. I've never like done an interview before. So this was really fun.
Well, I am honored that this is your first opportunity, and if I do say so, I truly enjoyed this conversation. It's just wonderful. I always love conversations like this, where like people get to truly indulge on the stuff they've been able to create and know more about what's going on behind it, like how much you're putting into it, because I'm always fascinated with this kind of stuff, and this conversation was exactly that and then some. So thank you for your time more than anything else.
Yeah, and again, thank you. I also really enjoyed this conversation. I think this was a really fun way to spend a Sunday evening,
There
if I
you
do
go.
say.
There you go. Well, if people want to spend potentially more than a Sunday evening with you and get to truly know the art that we've just been gushing over for the past hour or so, go ahead and plug yourself for the people at home.
Okay, you can find me under the name BroncoBurro on Twitter and also on Tumblr. I especially suggest Tumblr because it's like the last social media site where you can post long form content. Please use it. You can also technically find me on Instagram at Bronco_Burrow, but I do not use Insta that much. So yeah, that's where you can find me. I'm also on YouTube technically, but I haven't posted there in a while, so yeah.
Well, hopefully whenever Rumble does get done, it'll be posted there, and I will be eagerly excited to see how that one turns out. So there we go.
Absolutely. It will be up there eventually. I want to see if I can get it into any like small like film festival things
absolutely.
First. But yeah, it will be there at some point in the future. And, when I do start working on Forever Gold, I might post stuff there. I don't know yet.
Once again, you keep feeding me just like samples and tastes of what you got. It just makes me hungrier and hungrier.
It's all in my master plan to reel people in, you see.
You're reeling people in hopes that they'll eventually enjoy the buffet of incredible content you have for us. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
I guess I do. If anyone listening is an artist who is early in their journey, and if you're like despairing about anything that you feel like you're never going to get good at, like this certain thing, trust me, you will eventually, and you won't even notice it until it's already happened. So like just keep going. Like the most important thing about art, like, isn't learning like anatomy fully. It isn't about like learning like what your style is. It isn't about like any of those individual things. It's just kind of about like doing it as much as possible, and worry not about the final result. Just enjoy the process, if I can say.
There you go. Wonderful words to end on. If I do say so. Yeah, words are wonderful, even whenever I'm right about to end the podcast. But with that, all I have left to say is for the people at home, hasta luego, mi amigos. Tell me what's wrong, tell me it's parts and Thank you so much for sticking to the end. If this is your first time listening, I greatly appreciate it. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're a returning guest, especially if you're returning from last week's episode, guys, I appreciate the love and enthusiasm for last week's episode. I sincerely hope you guys enjoyed, and especially for how y'all showed out. Like, last week's episode was insane, but this week's episode is certainly, once again, no exception to that rule. I genuinely enjoyed the conversation with Danny, and I was grateful to be introduced to her art and get the chance to really sit down and talk. I'm always amazed whenever I'm introduced to someone I never even thought of beforehand. It just shows more or less how cool the art community is, more or less. The fact that it seems like every single time I turn around, I'm introduced to someone else doing something absolutely incredible. That's part of the reason why I'm usually open to that kind of stuff when it comes to this podcast. That's why I'm usually open to suggestions and stuff, because I know and love like my little corner of the internet, but that doesn't always mean that incredible art isn't always out there. I'm always blown away with what you guys are able to create. I'm always absolutely blown away with how you guys are able to present yourself, the concepts you're able to come up with, the universal language, more or less. And it always wows me, and I certainly welcome it, and I certainly anticipate every little new bit that I get to see. So, yeah. Keep up the awesome work, guys. And Danny, once again, thank you for taking the time to be here and to chat up about your stuff. It was a honor and a pleasure to get to talk to you. But now let's see. For those that are new, I like to give a little quote unquote inspirational thing to wrap things up, more or less. And I think for this week, it's just, if you truly love what you do, don't hesitate to talk about it. Don't hesitate to put it out there. Don't hesitate to put yourself out there more than anything else. You might not always get, a bunch of hits when it comes to what you're posting out there. People are not going to always see what you do. But especially if you keep putting yourself out there and keep showcasing to the world the cool stuff you're able to do, there's going to be a point to where someone's going to catch on. Someone's going to see it, and someone's going to actually love it. I know I certainly will whenever I see it, because I know the amount of time, love, and effort you put into stuff. But don't feel discouraged just because something doesn't necessarily hit. All right? It'll eventually hit if you keep doing it for fun more than anything else. For the love, passion, and fun. People will certainly see that. They will recognize it. And the people will come and show that love and appreciation for what you do. I know you can do incredible stuff, so don't hold back.